Hello and welcome to On the Mic with Mike. As usual, I am Mike Jarvis, and I'm very pleased to say that in this edition, I am joined by a gentleman that I have a lot of respect for. Haven't seen him in years and years and years and years. That's not an indication of his age, it's more an indication of mine. But I'm so happy to say, you hear that laughter there? That's the eternally effervescent Dr. Gary Morton. Dr. Gary, wonderful to have you. Welcome.
Well, I can tell you it's an absolute pleasure to be in your presence, even if it's virtually. It's always good to hear your voice on the other end as well. You talk about respect, and what I see it's a mutual thing because I've got loads of respect for you and what you do for Montserrat and Montserratians all around the world. So thank you, Mike.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Well, as I said in my previous note to you, what we are doing in this series is sort of looking at very broadly where Montserrat is at the moment and how do we, in this together, nudge the island or give it a massive leap forward. And I think this is particularly important in your case because in every respect that we could think of, you are heavily invested in Montserrat, in the tourism industry, your family, your friends, your passion for the island, in everything that you do, despite your sort of globe-trotting business persona, Montserrat is at the core of everything that you do. So let us begin by looking at your perspective as someone who has made now direct financial investment in Montserrat. So there's a business component to this as well. How do you assess Montserrat at the moment?
Well, Montserrat is certainly at crossroads. I think that it has huge potential and a huge opportunity for sure. And I always will be vested and invested in Montserrat and in the development of our people. It's no matter where in the world I am, Montserrat is always with me and in my heart for sure. And just really to go to your question, you had kind of spoke about the dichotomy of deciding for either quantum leap, improvement and development or nudging ahead. And what I would say there, Mike, is that it shouldn't be mutually exclusive. I think we need both. We need to continue to nudge ahead, but we also need, quantum leap development. And really, in order to achieve that, I just think, our leaders and our people in general need to really think, big picture in terms of seizing the potential that Montserrat has. And that really begins with access to the island. A lot of the challenges and untapped potential is really due to the lack of access.
But in terms of access, that is particularly critical to your investment slash business interest in Montserrat. After all, you are in the tourism industry. You have invested and developed, and I think you are still in the process of expanding high and high profile accommodation, is it all villa type operation?
Yes, that is very true. It does have a direct correlation to tourism, but I think it has a direct correlation to everything in Montserrat, really. Whether it's getting goods in, whether it's development of the people, whether it's development of the population, whether it's I mean, it really will impact a plethora of every economic resource and activity that pertains to the island. And so that's why I say that is the number one and or should be the absolute number one priority for Montserrat and for our leaders. And I don't think that, it's I think so big picture that it's not something that I can see being solved in necessarily one term of government. this probably will take multiple terms, but we have to start thinking big now in order to realize that goal or to be able to seize that opportunity.
And ideally, when we speak or when you speak of access, what type of access are we looking at that you think would work best for Montserrat, given your global experience?
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that the key access for Montserrat is ear access, and I think really big. I'm not thinking about twin autos or Islanders or improved Islander, if you will. I'm thinking having a 747 land in Montserrat. I'm thinking really big because that will solve the challenge of the economies of scale issues that we have. That will solve the challenge of bringing in the kind of goods that we want on a more immediate basis. That will solve really amount of folks being able to have easy access, not from just Antigua, but from multiple ports. That's where you can really get people seeing Montserrat and being exposed to Montserrat in a way that they would want to live and become Montserratian and contribute to our society. And that's where it starts to impact population and all the other economic growth components that go along with that.
If there's one person who understands how the international private sector works, that is yourself, particularly with your involvement in the insurance sector globally and that sort of thing. So, with respect to Montserrat, particularly the access issue, what will it take to get to even the halfway point of what you're talking about? I mean, is this purely government led, or are we looking at something that's business slash private sector driven?
Yeah, I think that you know what, we can't leave anyone out. We need all hands on deck. When we're thinking about really big picture goals, everyone needs to be involved. And so, when we're thinking about the funding, when we're thinking about the planning, all that stuff should involve all of the stakeholders, because every one of them are a stakeholder. And just really to think about it, it's that's a complex capital project that is going to need really significant planning and capital requirements to be able to execute. And really, one, we've got to first realize that that is the biggest opportunity for us as a people and as a country, and be on the same page. We've got to get alignment towards that goal. Make sure that everyone, all stakeholders, and you're not going to necessarily get everyone, but getting a good majority of stakeholders to understand that this has to be the priority vision. And if we are able to attain alignment on that, I think that we can do it, because ultimately, where there is a will, there is absolutely a way.
Let me pick your brain on that point you raised about alignment, particularly given Montserrat's unique situation. And by unique, I not only mean unique in terms of the disaster, the volcanic disaster that has obliterated practically the entire town and made two-thirds of the island uninhabitable. That is one situation. But what I'm looking at more so is Montserrat as an aid-dependent British overseas territory. But I would want to suggest that if I were the British government and I'm providing Montserrat with aid, even listening to what Dr. Gary Morton says, which makes a lot of sense in terms of the growth potential for the island, I am just going to give you just enough for you to get by. The rest will be up to you.
Yeah, and you're right. And that's why I say that you can't really depend on funding from just one source. This is where that we've got to really put our minds together and really think about and pool resources from multiple facets in order to pull this off. And it's one of those things that is really that complex that we might not be able to fathom, necessarily how everything gets necessarily pulled together to make this happen. But anything that is going to happen starts with taking the first step. That's where, we've got to align of saying, hey, this is a step that we do need to take and get alignment on that so that we can start going down the road. Because as I said earlier, this is not going to take one round of government. Like this is not a 5-year project. This will take multiple rounds of governments, if you will, to realize that achievement. But if there are so many other islands that have been able to do it, we can do it too. And think about like the difference that an international airport has made for islands like St. Vincent, which was relatively remote before, but game changer for them. The airport in Antigua is a game changer for them. You just think about any small hard to access country that been able to bring in an international level airport. It's been a game changer for their country, for their economy, for their people. And we have to start now thinking big picture, because, I understand, where folks may come from in terms of they're thinking about, hey, what's feasible within, a 5-year term or within the next year, and it's very short-sighted. It's like you've got to think about not just our generations, but generations of Montserratians to come, and the difference that we can make in those lives, not just in the lives of our own today.
You've hit the nail on the head and lead me into what I'm about to suggest to you, because I can hear somebody saying, well, come on, Mike, you need to ask him the question. All right, so here comes the question. What role for a Dr. Gary Morton in the Montserrat as you visualize it then?
Great question. I'm one of the folks that I'm happy to be a thought leader, an action oriented investor, thought partner in terms of really, getting alignment, that first step towards, these big picture dreams and goals, if you will. That's where I think I can play an immediate role, right? I am connected with a lot of great people here in the US and around the world. I would love to bring big picture goals that, I can help, bring them on board for, because there is just so much opportunity here to have. And I'm happy to be part of that. And so the role, it could be anything. And I'm my hands is always up, and I'm always ready to kind of pitch in and do my part wherever it is. I'm not so much a political guy, if you will, because I just want to get things done, right? I'm not into a lot of talking and just kind of being in this negative space, or I'm a really big picture thinker and an action oriented doer. And so sign me up any day when we want to really get serious about taking action and executing big plans for Montserrat because, that's where I can play a significant and critical role.
And I can safely say that you're the type of person who not only talks the talk, but as we all know and as we all can see, you walk your talk as well. I mean, come on, look at the scale of that property investment, that tourism property investment that you've made in Montserrat. But I think, someone would say, well, listen, if we don't get Montserrat moving and don't get the access sorted out and don't get the economy on a growth trajectory, it could hurt Dr. Gary's investment.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Certainly, from a financial perspective, it certainly could hurt. But I'm not even thinking about the financial. I'm thinking about, what the difference we can make from Montserrat and the exposure and the delight folks can have when they experience or paradise. I'm unselfishly thinking about, the difference that it can make, not just within my time, a short time, if you will, on this earth, but like well beyond that. And so what I think I've started is just the start of what can be achieved here. And so, am I looking for huge returns? Absolutely not. I started off telling you that like this is where my heart is. And so I am, really going to a place where I just want to do great by Montserrat and by Montserratians. I want folks to have the best experience when they're in paradise. And that's why, I take to heart every, piece of feedback, what have you, because I want to continue to elevate the experience for folks that are visiting Montserrat. I want to be able to position to provide lots of jobs so that folks are not so dependent on government. I want to be able to be that person who can really provide the exposure to what entrepreneurship can do for the island. And, so folks could be more dependent on themselves and really achieve, just extraordinary things for Montserrat.
If I recall correctly, not only looking at your direct business investment in the tourism sector, you were also involved. I think you were brought on board for that remote worker scheme and nomadic operation system, put it that way, very bad phraseology, that many of the islands started tapping into, and then COVID hit. But there was some momentum happening there.
Yeah, there is, and that too was a huge opportunity that I think that we missed the boat on seizing. Because on one hand, there are progressive minded folks that really helped to put this in place, but there are also anti-progressive folks who put in all these policies to prevent people from being able to come to Montserrat. And like I understand to some extent, hey, you want to protect Montserrat from COVID and so forth. And so there need to be certain systems in place. But like, when you've got $1 million investors, and I'm saying this because I actually had $1 million investors who want to come to Montserrat, check it out for a few months, working remotely, and potentially invest here, which could make, you get 10 of these folks and it could make a quantum leap of a difference in terms of development. And some of these folks were just not, quite frankly, not given the opportunity to come. Like they said, oh, you're not Montserratian, so you can't come to Montserrat. And I've had some of these folks come as close as Antigua, waiting. Like they came with, because, I'm hoping
Wow.
that I could have worked with government officials to help bring them over to Montserrat so that they can take advantage of kind of the remote opportunity. And we couldn't get that done. And like, and it's kind of like, the dog chasing its tail, where one person is blaming this other person and this other person's blaming this other person. But it's like, come on, folks, this is the things that we need to do, because these are game changers for Montserrat. These are the people that we want to really have Montserrat be chosen as their second, or hopefully, become their first home, because they could make the kind of investments that will take Montserrat to another level of elevation that we've never seen. These are the kind of folks that can help invest in achieving, an international airport. And we didn't care that for them to be here. Like, it was so short-sighted, but it was a good revelation to me, how hard it is to get things done in a Montserrat, because you do all the right things, you recruit, you have this program, and the program says they are able to come, and you know they're not allowing the folks to come, because they're saying, oh, they don't have they don't have a good background check, and like, well, this person runs a Fortune 100 company, like, they do extensive background checks, so that this is a good person, right? And like, like, to me, things that were pretty, like, insignificant were the showstoppers from getting real investors to the island, and it's disheartening, but it was a good lesson for me, on how challenging it is, to get anti-progressive folks on board with big picture um, opportunities.
Yeah, and you return again to that phrase of big picture thinking and big thinking, because I mean we need to be responsive, not just responsible, but responsive to these opportunities when they arise. I must say that I sense your frustration there, but your passion is palpable, and I want it to be contagious as well. Again, not using any COVID references as such, but
I
but
like
but
that.
but that is really the point, because opportunities like those, if we don't hold on to them, other islands are our competitors. We might be neighbors and brothers and sisters, but they are competitors as well, and they are in the same game. Let me ask you, Doc, coming just towards the sort of wrap-up point, if we are having an election, I said you are not a political person, this is not about politics, but we cannot ignore it. We have an election
Mhm.
coming up on the 24th. If you were to get all of the political leaders and all of the big political players together in a room and say, listen, guys, come October 25th, this is where we restart or reset. This is the new game plan we would need. What would be your top priorities for them? And that would also include in terms of local infrastructure as well. What would it be?
Yes, it's a great question that you asked, Mike. And I think, like, the question that we really need to pose, and the one that the aspiring politicians need to answer, is to be able to articulate to the people of Montserrat, hey, what are the top priorities? Like, they need to have a good comprehension of those top priorities for Montserrat, and more importantly, what are their 30, 60, 90-day, 5-year, 10-year action plans to help execute on those priorities. Because there's just too much talk about negativity, and quite frankly, just too much talk, and not enough of really articulating what the action plans are going to be to really make the difference in those priority areas for Montserrat.
Dr. Gary Swanston, it's been an absolute pleasure, an education, and an inspiration speaking with you. And I do hope that we get the chance to talk again. And even more importantly, I hope that those in a position to change things have listened and will make things happen. Thank you very much indeed.
Likewise, I'm humbled for the opportunity to be here with you, Mike. And thank you again for really extending the opportunity to speak and share some of my thoughts. And this is all done in respect for Montserrat and for the things that we can achieve. As Montserratians together, not just again for our generations, but for generations to come. It's been an absolute pleasure. I thank you. Love you, man. I can't wait to see you in person. Look forward to hanging together and talking and maybe taking some action together on some things for continued elevation of Montserrat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.